the letters that were off the dock, to back up. So it wasn't gone through. That just went back up to YouTube. Sign back up. I didn't see the date, but it's a different auction house. But it's the same thing, the 34 and the 33 in the house and all the way through. Yeah. I got that much cash
I wasn't as well prepared as this guy. He used to be in front of the crowd. Well, he's a TV star. Yeah, right. I have been in front of camera.
Good. How's everything?
Doing pretty well. What's yours?
Busy. Trip go okay? Which one? There was 3.
Yeah.
Just good as fast as I could.
2 weeks.
Fast as I could turn them around.
Back, he's like, oh.
Sunday was a 21-hour day.
Hey,
Driving involved? Buying, loading. I didn't get loaded till 7:30 at night. Sunday night. Then I'd go till 1 a.m. and there was just nothing left to do.
Really?
I tried to make it home, but I wouldn't have got home till 6 in the morning.
Making sure they get everybody coming
Yeah, so this is my busiest time of year.
Did you want to go to a farm auction or what?
Not so much those anymore, but yeah, sometimes those. Everything is 600-700 miles back.
Truck it in, unload, truck back out. Fried chicken next time, man. Hit them green.
Craigslist is like this. That's a fool. This stuff is just horrendous condition. That's where people unload their garbage. So, yeah, no, if it's anything that has anything to do with the internet, I generally stay away.
Go to that tractor. I can't find my buddy that you're not pretty much able to.
35 years in the business. It's just I've been doing it so long. I know everybody and they all know me. So I sell them some things, I sell me some things. It's getting tough.
Yeah.
The internet's putting a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So, well, the problem with the internet is people have no expertise. So they can't judge what they're buying because they can't see what they're buying, they can't lay their hands on it. And anything with moving parts. Well, they're not, they give them, selling it because it's so good they can't stand it. Well, look at what on that Vanderbilt show. Look at the garbage they buy at those car auctions, drag it in, and practically jump through the floor. And they thought it was perfect. One thing they never say is how bad those people are. That's the one thing they never say.
Sometimes, yeah, sure. People don't want to put their business out there.
There's some days.
Well, they're embarrassed. So, yeah.
It runs, it doesn't.
And that's what I try to, that's why I have to see stuff in person. I just don't want to think that, I can't, well, not that I don't want it, I can't do it.
I don't say that.
Because if I go in, like say I bought a tractor, and I was told or thought that I had to do $800 worth of work, and it turned out I had to do $500. Well, how are you? Whatever I may have gained, lost in turned upside down.
Right.
I didn't do it. The problem was,
It's an interesting business. Right now, you know, I'm busy parting all that stuff, because there's never buy anything used that doesn't mean there's no such thing, it just doesn't exist. Just because I don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. Well, and you know what? I mean, I'm telling you,
Yeah, spray and get rid of it.
Right,
So you can help bring it fast.
That's right.
I looked everything
Just gotta
over
go
4 or
with
5
it.
times.
Yeah, I am too, I'm with you on that. I just want to.
Or I underestimate.
I didn't think he won that. What
Is
is
Carl
He
coming
texted me
tonight?
and told him he got outbid.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought he had a report to do.
Oh, that number, I didn't know if it was a pretty number. Oh, yeah.
Because what does he want with it?
Yeah, I don't have any idea.
You see my hand just. No, we never use them.
All of oil and
I'm not allowed to have short thought.
Neither am I. I'm mad.
There's some oil and gas.
Is that right?
Not necessarily. Well, yeah, the crude oil line's not
Okay. Well, it wasn't. One time when I cut my hand open,
but,
it was his fault. He had a raw piece of glass. Said, "Why your bed?" He said, "Well, it was there for months." He was gonna shoot it for frame. Now I get up, and I make it into my food. You get up, don't touch your
Is that okay? Oh, good.
I did, I went for my
Anytime that, there's service there,
okay.
lots.
I don't know if,
It was his fault. He should have never took it.
Yeah, anytime they start before 7, they'll be through there.
okay.
So, you know, don't.
It wasn't so bad going in, but boy,
Well, a lot of folks do some blasting someone. Try it out, yeah.
I just yelled at
He's a
him.
klutz. Carl, I
Oh,
brought that for you.
what, did I win that?
Yep.
Yay.
Now look, he's happy.
I know.
So Carl,
That's great.
I brought that for you. I didn't
Now it's like.
Oh, it's one of those old-fashioned
That's-
readers, no, I used to use those.
Sorry to see you.
Military families and assisting homebound clients. And national service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. Senior Corps REXP participants serve in more than 50,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. National service participants increase the impact of the organizations they serve, both through their direct service and by managing millions of additional volunteers. National service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact and increase the return on taxpayer dollars. Senior Corps REVP participants demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. The Corporation for National and Community Service shares our priority with local leaders nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and local leaders across the country for National Service Recognition Day on April 3rd, 2018. Next, we have National Libraries. Whereas libraries are not just about what we have for people, but what we do for and with people. Libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions, and library workers and librarians fuel efforts to better their communities, campuses, and schools. Librarians are organizers and information experts who, for centuries, have guided people to the best information resources. Librarians provide more than facts. They provide the expertise and services that add meaning to these facts. Librarians continue to fulfill their role in leveling the playing field for all those who seek information and access to technologies, especially as our society is at a critical juncture regarding the changing information landscape and the skills needed to thrive in our digital world. Libraries and librarians are looking beyond their traditional roles and providing more opportunities for community engagement and delivering new services that connect closely with patrons' needs. Libraries and librarians open a world of possibilities through innovative STEAM programming, maker spaces, job-seeking resources, and the power of reading. Libraries work to serve all community members, including people of color, immigrants, people with disabilities, and the most vulnerable in our communities, offering services and educational resources that transform communities, open minds, and promote inclusion and diversity. Libraries, librarians, library workers, and supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week. And both of these are very worthwhile organizations, and they deserve to be commended. Next, is there anybody who wishes to address the board? Okay. Next, we have approval of the consent agenda, which is meeting minutes from March 16th, 2018, regular meeting, Platteville Irrigating and Milling Company lease agreement renewal, cancellation of the April 3rd meeting, regular meeting of the Board of Trustees because it's an election, the financials, and the paid bills.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could I have a roll call, please?
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Adrian Sandoval,
Aye.
Kim Nelson,
Aye.
Michael Cowper, Troy Blum,
Aye.
oh, Holt Morris.
Yes. That's right.
Okay, motion carried. Next, we have action items, purchasing policy discussion. Mr. Rankin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back, actually 5 years ago this month, the town adopted the purchasing policy that you have in your packets. Put this on the agenda for a review and discussion of potential changes as need be. I'd like to bring up just a few items myself. On page 2, under authorized employee purchasing amounts, since this policy was enacted, the town manager might limit has been 5,000, and the department heads are 2,000. Looking at other purchasing policies, other communities, these limits vary based upon the different types of community. One suggestion I would have it, and part of it is these spending amounts are based upon budget approved items. So it's up to you, obviously, that we have an item that comes in and it's $5,500 or $5,600 or whatever the case may be. Even though it's budget approved, I'm not authorized to sign it unless there's an emergency. There's an emergency clause in here. But that's something to consider, maybe increasing those slightly for the department heads and myself. On page 3, blanket purchase orders. By the way, I reviewed this with the town attorney before tonight. Blanket purchase orders, these basically have a cumulative dollar amount no greater than $15,000, encompassing more than a single purchase. A good example is we annually contract with LaSalle Oil for all of our fuel for public work, when the fuel tanks have back gasoline and diesel. And we'll write out an invoice, or not an invoice, but a PO for the amount that we budgeted for. Sometimes we go over. It just depends on the year and the type of work being done. So my question is 15,000, or could we increase that to 20,000? Because that's a better threshold than some of the line items that we use on the blanket purchase order.
Do you remember when that was that amount was instated?
Back in 2013. Because this hasn't changed in the last 5 years.
Fuel prices went up and then now they've come back down.
It fluctuates.
Yeah.
But that was one example I noticed that Devin has been doing our POs, and sometimes we'll do one, then at the end of the year we have to do another one just to cover that amount. So it works. It'll just be a quicker process.
So if it's over the amount, then you have to get the merit approved, or it has to come to the board?
No, I don't have any authority on that.
We just have to generate another PO for
The balance fund.
Oh, okay, yeah, so it makes sense to.
But my recommendation is to increase that to 20,000. Now on page 4, bidding guidelines, there's a number of different types of
funding limits, that requires, everything from just a quote to informal quotes to written to the full RFP. Right now, it's 25,000 greater for formal bids and RFPs for advertising. And there's no wording in here, I'm gonna defer to Kendra. I think projects over 50,000 require bonding, is that correct? By statute?
Yes.
So, do we need to include that as part of this purchasing policy, or that's just a contract issue?
It's just a contract
Okay,
issue.
so that's not.
That's
I mean, we
state
could put it in
statute,
there.
isn't it?
Yes.
And then at the very end, if you go to page 5, the last bullet point, reads elected officials and town employees may not participate in the bidding process of one town fund, which elected official or employee may receive financial gain. This involves town funds, taxpayer funds.
That hasn't changed for many years.
That has not changed. I mean,
It
there's,
change.
there's projects we've done with donated funds that we've pursued, and we've tried to get the lowest bid regardless of who they may be. But as far as town funds, I did put in front of the board, my mistake, a recommendation last year, and I apologize for that. I was just trying to get the lowest bid out there. My question with this one is do we need to add any language? I talked to Kendra a little bit.
Hold on just a second, before we go any further. Any bid that's offered to you, you don't have discretion. You have to present all bids to the board. But you don't have discretion in
Unless
that
it's a
area.
violation of a purchasing law.
Okay, so you would have discretion then? Okay.
Right, it would be a valid bid.
I just did not catch it. I did not think about it.
Okay. thank you.
So what's the repercussions? Because last September, we had a trustee put forth a bid.
But
And I was dumbfounded what to do, and what's the consequences? I mean,
no action was taken. We continued.
well, we continued it, but just till the spring, we've got a new board coming on.
Is it open for bids again?
It will be. We continued the project to 2018 this summer.
So I would assume it would be open for new bids then.
And my job is to do a better job monitoring what this is.
Well, but the fact is, the board, it was put before the board. What's the implications for the board having to vote on an issue that
But we
shouldn't be there?
We didn't select anything, we just continued it.
We continued it because I was dumbfounded as to how to stop a bid that
We-
should not have been submitted.
We didn't bid on it because we talked about the planting the grass in the
Yes,
fall.
it's the only way I could stop the bidding process happening,
Then
was
why-
to come
then
forth
why
with
didn't
that.
you, why didn't you address it at that time and then instead
I
of?
did, but
No, you-
this was not a legal or ethical or whatever bid, I don't know what to call it. These are rules and not regulations, so it's not breaking the law, but yet, it should never have happened.
To answer your question, it was my oversight, so what it falls on is me.
You're supposed to take forth what's presented to you and bring it to the board, that's not it?
No,
So what should we have done when this
exactly
bid
what
came
was
forth?
done.
It was just continued, so there's no
You didn't-
issue for.
You didn't accept the bid.
There's
We
no
didn't even
action.
consider the bid.
Right.
Well, we did consider this.
Yes,
No,
we
we
did,
didn't.
we
We
did.
considered it
No,
because
we
we
didn't,
talked
because
at
we
length.
continued it to a later date, we never considered it, we never voted on it.
We didn't vote on it, but we discussed it.
To continue it for the spring, to put it up for rebid and.
That was the only way I could stop it. The fact is,
Then why-
we discussed,
If one of
The
the trustees
differences.
at the time realized that there was a conflict between the rules and what was being presented, they had raised a point of order to the mayor, to the chairman, and pointed that out, that the bid was improper or violated the rules. The chair at that point has the authority to rule the proposal out of order and have it removed from the table.
well, I was at a loss as to what to do because we hadn't encountered this before.
I think that
That
if
would
that
be
happens again, I think what you would do is bring it up and say, I don't think this is a proper bid, and everyone would look at it and say, okay, I don't think it's a proper bid either, and then talk to the manager about it, and then continue, I would continue the whole thing, you know, just to see maybe, because sometimes you may not know, maybe it's a little unclear, so you wouldn't have to take any action on it though. There's no need to take action on it. I think the best thing to do is to bring it up in front of the rest of the board, and then say, oh, I don't think this is a proper bid, and then, you know, if it needs to go back to a bid to reopen, or if another bid needs to be accepted and that one rejected, that can happen. There's a lot of different options. There's no particularly right way to do it. I think the way it worked out, it was fine. But as long as the bid is not awarded, then you're fine.
Been presented.
But there's no repercussions against us because we didn't bid on anything, we didn't make a motion to anything, we just continued it.
Well, what do you find with regards to other boards that you deal with regards to a policy like that? Do all of them, or most of them have that stipulation?
No, it really varies. It depends on the size of the town, honestly, and it depends how many people offer the services.
And I've always considered it as being something that we shouldn't have in our rules.
No,
Because
somebody can get on the
We are a
board.
small community. We have, how many people on this board, Hope?
7.
Are you gonna be swayed by me if I propose to have my business?
Yeah, I'm not gonna accept it because you're not supposed to be a person to get elected on the board to benefit yourself. You're being elected to the board to help the town. You're not
Okay.
benefiting yourself.
Should you be financially penalized for being a member of
Then you
this board?
shouldn't, then you shouldn't be on the board.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
I have
You-
confronted somebody
Yeah.
that wanted to run, except he didn't want to run because he wanted to do business with the town. He knew the rules.
So we preclude participation in business people in
Well,
this town.
It's a
People
moot,
who are probably
You
very qualified to be
Cannot
on this board.
benefit
Because
on this town. You can't
It's-
benefit from
it's a
it.
moot point
Okay,
because
Number one, it's wrong.
supposing I want to annex a chunk of land into this town,
Can't annex into town.
and it's gonna give me a financial benefit.
it's.
Should I be allowed to annex
That's
into this
different
town?
than coming in and putting in a
Annex
sales
business in this
tax.
town.
That's different than coming in.
I understand that,
That's
but I'm not
different. You're
saying,
doing
that
apples
you guys did anything wrong there.
This is specifically on the bidding process for contracts, it's all.
But, right, but it's spelled out in the ethics, liability, and best practices by the state also, the same wording. It is not a matter of just town. On page 39, ethical regulations prohibit engaging in contractual relationships for personal benefit of the public official and/or the official's relatives.
And we got that
It's the
orientation,
state.
didn't we?
Yep, we get it every time. The new board will get it. It's not just a town policy, it's
Right,
a state policy.
it's a moral thing. Yes, it is a
There's
moral
nothing
thing.
immoral.
You
There's nothing
cannot
immoral about
come
trying to do
into it
business.
on the board to benefit your business.
And I'm not saying that they come onto the board to benefit their business.
Well, how do we know
But if they
that?
find being a member of this board is being detrimental to their business because they can no longer participate in a public bid or in anything that might benefit them because they're a member of this board.
I've been on the board for 4 years. I have a business out
That's
there. I
right.
never submitted any kind of a bid
And that's fine.
to the town.
And it's fine, I understand that. But I'm just saying that when you're dealing with a small community like this, people have businesses in this town. I would not
And you
be,
know what, we're
I would
growing
not be
too, so-
opposed to your business being able to participate in public, being able to participate just like any other business, because you have volunteered your time to this board and to say, okay, well, you can't benefit.
That's right,
From-
you can't
from this
benefit.
We
board.
need to be
being in a position.
transparent to the public.
We are transparent. Every one of
are.
these meetings is recorded. We are transparent.
You're
We're
breaking
not all of us
the
in a
rules by
cabal.
state and by town.
Yes, pretty.
And everybody on the board knows those rules.
For whatever it's worth, you know, I've been on the board, what, 7.5 years? And there's tons of times when the town could have used my services or my products. But the problem is, it does affect your decision-making abilities. Even if you say it doesn't, it does. It affects the way you look at things. And look at on the federal level, state level, county level, cronyism, corruption, that's when they start screaming those
That's fine.
things.
There could be cronyism happening right now, and it has nothing to do with your business. It's a moral question.
It is a moral.
It is a
It
moral question.
The conflict of
And,
interest is something.
and to have, and to say, if we decided as a town, Steve's bid, his businessman, his bid is the best bid for this town.
Completely improper.
No, I don't,
You
I'm sorry, I
know,
don't
you
agree.
take on this job, you do not.
That's right.
You do not
Completely
benefit.
improper.
I'm not saying you come onto this job
How
to
do we know somebody
benefit.
don't come on
I
here
don't-
to
I don't-
benefit?
what?
If we change these rules, how do we know somebody's not gonna come on the board and benefit their business?
Would preclude the possibility.
If somebody comes on this board, they're one vote, Hope. They're one vote out of all these people.
But the
All right.
problem is, this is breaking the rules, and then if
What,
we
no, it's
vote
not
on it,
breaking the
then
rules,
they're
it's a
breaking the
guideline,
rules.
it's a guideline.
No.
I
it's
just
a
asked-
rule,
I
and
just
in the
asked
state,
the-
it's a regulation,
I
in the
just
policy,
asked,
it's a rule.
I just asked the attorney if other towns do this. She says it's a mix.
Okay,
Smaller towns sometimes don't, okay? And that's all I asked.
The state supersedes that, I think.
Just to be clear, that's a liability handbook, or elected officials handbook provided by CML, and it's not a statute, it's a guideline.
Regulation.
Guidelines.
It's a guideline.
It's
It's a
an
guideline.
ethical regulation according to page 39.
I just wanna be clear on the black and white issue that we're talking about. It's up to, go ahead. It's up to every, I've talked to the town managers about it before I put this before the board, because I didn't want this to be a debate necessarily. I mean, everybody has their different opinions, but we have a very basic policy. For any contract, no one can bid on it. I let one come through without bidding last year. I apologize. I was just trying to get the lowest bid for this town. I didn't think twice about it. Not like I read this every day, so. But some communities where half the board, and I worked for one back in Kansas, and don't hold that against me, but I worked for one where half the board was family, and they own all the major businesses in town. So what they do is they excuse themselves from the vote. Luckily, there's enough for a quorum. And if the rest of the people and the citizens feel comfortable that the taxpayers were getting a benefit, regardless of who was providing the service, that's how they thought. Every place is different. And it,
And just to be clear, the state law that you're referring to, it doesn't apply if it's competitively bid. So if there's competitive bidding, anyone can submit a bid, and that isn't a prohibited contract. What's prohibited is if you have a business and you come in and just get a contract and the town manager signs it and there's no bidding. So the point, I think, what you all were talking about before is if it comes in as a bid, you have, let's say, 3 options, and you pick the lowest responsible bidder. The person who's being benefited by that contract would recuse themselves from the vote. Everyone else would vote on it, but that is an exception. So you can have a contract, just to be clear, it doesn't violate any state law. You can have a contract with an interested party as long as it goes through a competitive bidding process and the person who's benefiting recuses themselves from the vote and says, I can't vote on this because I'm interested. Discloses it, says, if you all approve this contract, it will help my family or my business or my partner's business or whatever it may be. Discloses that first, then the rest of the board gets to vote on it. And that is exempt from the prohibition that you're referring to in that manual. So I just want to be clear on what the law is.
So
But it
a
implicates
state
me.
representative can have a business. And if he recuses himself from the vote, his business can get that contract.
As long as it's competitively bid. And
But in the town of Platteville, we cannot do that.
that's correct.
That's correct. Well, at the time, this bid was, one bid was twice as high as the other bid. It wasn't close.
And we didn't
I don't
vote
think
on
that's-
it.
I don't think that's
We didn't
relevant.
vote on it.
and there was a,
This board may
remember-
very well have
But
awarded
it
the bid to
divides,
the lowest.
but it divides the board because we actually had a discussion and some people were implying that the low bid couldn't possibly be met. And yet we took the low bid from the same
They
company.
did not
on
imply,
another
because that was
issue.
me that brought it
They
up.
did not.
Was me that brought it up. And the only question I had was, what is the difference here? Okay, this company says they can do it for this amount of money, but they're saying that every overage is gonna cost this much. How is that?
They did the
How-
same amount of material. And you were implying that
No,
there
I
wasn't any way
implied-
we could get
He
sod
was
for
asking
that.
why
This is-
why is there such a big
This is
difference?
going off the subject, girls and
Okay.
boys.
It is, and I'm sorry.
Well, I'm
So-
sorry
But-
too, but it divides the board when we're breaking the rules.
So here's my point of view, because this involves me and we all know that. When this bid was brought forward, we were asked to bid on this because we live in town. We have a vested interest in this town. We know
Who
what
asked you
kind
to
of
bid?
work we
But
do.
you know the
And
rules
we-
of the town.
Let her talk
I
about
do
it
know the
first.
rules of the town and I have spoke to Kendra about them. And so we gave a bid. When that came up for discussion, we were just a little bit more than twice as much. I recused myself from the discussion and the vote. And that was, I have since, after the meeting, talked to town manager and David, that I will never participate in a bid again, because here's why. That's my business. I have expert knowledge in that area, and I couldn't participate and give any of you any kind of information or advice. So, to me, that is my cost on the board, okay? And I would rather we all make an educated decision versus my company get a job.
I did not appreciate the bid being put on, knowing that it was breaking the town policy.
Well, we could go into what we do and do not appreciate. I could go on to, it's not appropriate.
I think
I
it
didn't
is.
break any rules.
Yes,
and-
you did. There's a town policy saying you cannot
That's
do a
right.
personal gain
Did one of the
on a
town,
bid.
did one of the staff
You
members
cannot
ask you to put a
submit
bid in?
Again, may I?
Yes,
At that time of soliciting bids, we were working with Steve, Dave and I on a number of different projects. We're talking about memorial and other things. It
Steve
falls
is my
on
husband for
Steve
the,
Sandoval. It solely falls on me. I apologize. I was trying no ill will. I was,
You don't need
No,
to
you
take
don't
the
need to
blame for
apologize.
this.
I didn't pull the purchasing policy to double check. I knew we wrote it 5 years ago. I get that. But I was simply trying to find a way to stretch the dollars as far as I could. The bid submitted was substantially more than the other bid. And looking at some other bids that we had out there, the low bid was different from those. There's one other, I believe.
and it wasn't, ours wasn't even the recommended on there when we chose to continue it, or you chose to continue. I wasn't a part of that.
The fact is, you're putting us in a spot, being on the board, submitting a bid, you divide the board instead of bringing the board together.
How
We've
did
worked
she
together
divide
for-
the board? Now, that, you're trying to besmirch her, and that pisses me off, I'm sorry.
She's
Because
not
you're
doing
besmirching
that.
her.
That is not what she's doing.
Yes, she
I
is.
am
not.
saying there's a
Let's-
policy and you need
Let's
to
take it
follow
down
it.
if you not, guys. We can have a discussion.
There's a
We're not
reason
having
why
a-
there's policies.
Going back to what I stated before, Dave and I was working on bids. We approached Steve and multiple others to submit bids it's about a 50-50 on bids that we get. Not everybody will respond to us. We try to get at least 6 to 8, and hopefully we'll get 3 to 4. That I want to put on the record because it was our doing, my doing, it was my decision. So, that's it. I mean, I made a mistake, I make them every day.
Well, I'm not gonna change the policy, so.
Is that, so, this discussion, are we discussing whether to change the policy, whether to leave the policy the same? Is that what this discussion is?
I'm not-
I'm sort of at a loss right now.
I'm not promoting any change to the policy.
Okay.
What I'm asking is that the policy should involve more detail. I talked to Ken about that, to where in the half of small communities, there are small communities. I mean, we don't do contracts, at least not competitively, so this policy just negates that as well. We were talking about a concept of financial gain. Over the years, the many years of Platteville, many people, not many, but there are some who have businesses that have gained, but they're not under contract, they're just under services.
Correct.
So the question I'm getting at is how far do we go? Do we leave it just as it is? Because at some point it's gonna get really tough to get services that we may need that may cost $20. But I bring that up because it's the same conversation, it's just different dollar amount.
We have a lot of people who own businesses in this town who would be an asset on this board. And I think we need to seriously think about what we're doing and how we're wording things when people don't wanna be a part of this board because they own a business and it's going to affect their livelihood.
It's not gonna affect their livelihood if they don't, if
if they come on the board and that one bid is gonna affect their livelihood, well, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor,
You know-
I have a question.
Certainly.
Can the board expect that this purchasing policy will be revised in writing and submitted for the board's approval and a debate of the particulars at that time? Is that what's we're looking at in the future here, the next month or two?
Only if we get the direction to change it.
I'm not gonna change it.
Well, I think there's some portions of it that have already been indicated, the increased
Well, sure.
dollar amount,
For
so
Troy.
on and so forth. So if the purchasing policy is taken as a whole, and portions of it are gonna be changed, particularly the dollar amounts, then I'm assuming that policy in total, with the revisions, would be brought to the board for an action on the entire purchasing policy.
That's correct. Which will be a new board against.
So, if that's the case, it would be my suggestion that we save that debate for when the policy is presented.
And I suggest you include, it'll be a new board at that time, and I suggest you include discussion on whether or not we are gonna follow state's guidelines and allow competitive bidding by anybody, just like the state would allow.
The state does not allow.
The state does. Our attorney just clarified that point.
They do.
So what about this on page 39?
It's not exactly accurate the way that I don't have it in front of me, but the law is very clear. As long as it's subject to a competitive bidding process and the person who's receiving the benefit doesn't participate in the debate or the discussion or the vote, then it's fine. That's an exception to the rule.
And what's the liability to us for
No.
voting on it?
No. You're not liable. You can't be held liable for it, under any circumstances, so. Yeah, you're immune. So, I mean, if there was some
Are we
backdoor.
immune if we're voting on something that breaks the rules? Breaks
But
the
it
regulations?
doesn't break the rules.
It'd be violating town policy that's
Sure.
established by the board, it
Right.
wouldn't be violating statute.
Right.
So it's still a rule in the town, it's still a rule, I mean.
Sure, it's
It's
definitely-
a policy that we're breaking.
It's a policy of the town right now. It doesn't have to be that way. You may change it, you may leave it just as it is, and it's perfectly fine to leave it as it is, it's perfectly fine to change it. The only way you could change it is, you couldn't go any further than the state goes. So like I said, you can't say that a trustee can have their family member just get a contract without bidding, or have their own business. You couldn't go that far, but you could go as far as the state, or you could keep it exactly how it is. It's entirely up to the board.
Typically, when I make a recommendation on a policy change and the board has consensus on all the recommended items, I would take it from that night under the direction from the board, work with the town attorney, and present it at the next formal meeting for final review and adoption. Obviously, I don't feel that all of my recommendations have been, as far as consensus is concerned. So my recommendation this time, please the board is continue this to a future date to be determined. Because I do want some cleanup of this, because it still says finance director, it says the finance department, it's little things, but I want it to be accurate. And that's my only sole purpose.
The other thing, in the interim, I can also provide the board a memo that talks about the state policy versus the town's policy, just to give you the parameters of what you can do if you wanna do anything, that's all. That might be helpful.
Okay. I have abstained from dealing with the town, because I've always felt like it creates an ethical dilemma for me. It fosters cronyism, but subsequent boards can do as they see fit in their wisdom. I personally would never breach the rule that has been standing. If anybody doesn't have anything else, we're gonna move on to the next. Okay, next, community center roof replacement, Mr. Rankin.
Excuse me, when the packet went out to the board, I was still trying to obtain an estimate or a change order from TCC. What this stems from is when the subcontractor came in about a week ago or so, a little more, and reviewed the roof, the existing roof, to the new roof will go on the senior/fitness room in the garage. It says the community center had a roof, I'm assuming original from 1986 when the building was built. I have no record that it was ever changed or modified.
From what I looked at, I agree with you.
So the contract, when I got up there, and I think a year or so ago, we were looking for a leak for some water and so forth. The contractor noticed some rusting, didn't see any holes, but some fairly good rusting up toward the peak. And he had asked TCC, our general contractor, it'd be easier to replace the whole roof because he didn't want to do a roof for half the building, knowing the other one at some point would have to be replaced. And it was, in his mind, more cost effective since he was already there to replace the roof. And the second part of that is, it's gonna be a little tricky tying the new roof into the existing roof because of the age difference and the type of roof they have now. I mean, metal's metal, but still is a difference. A little bit worried about some seepage on the connection, but they think they can get that figured out.
Well, another issue is color matching. I mean, it doesn't mean anything until you're driving up and you can see it, it hits you, it assaults your eye.
And that was what I talked to Bob Fair, the architect, about previously is, in the least, prime to repaint the existing roof to match the other, which you can do is basically Rust-Oleum commercial type paint. But unfortunately, the bid came in at noon today. They sent me an email, $51,786.11.
For the entire, is it just for the community center that's bad?
Just for the community center roof replacement. I can't promote this to the board.
That doesn't make any sense.
I can't promote this to the board. My suggestion is to continue this to a future date to be determined. Let Dave and I look at some other contractors that specialize in roofs and see if we can get some lower bids on this roof.
Do they have a rundown of what that entails?
Demo, existing roof panels, gutters, downspouts, and install new roof, $43,000. Supply and install new trim gutter, downspouts, trim, rip cap, $800. Seamer rental, $1,200. General conditions, $582.75. Insurances, $351.36. Bond, $1,293.72. And contractors' fees, $4,558.28. The roof itself is looking at, other than bond, contractors' fees, general conditions, insurance, around $45,000.
They do roofing? Oh, wait, no.
I had an entire 40 by 60 building built for less than that.
So,
And I mean a very expensive building because I wanted high quality. Something isn't right here. Something's not making sense.
and I was a little surprised. I was hoping for 15 to 20, to be honest with you.
I would tend to agree with you on that.
But it's a sub, don't know the names, it's irrelevant, it's not TCC.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I've enjoyed working with them, but I would ask the board to continue this. And
Put it out for RFPs.
I work with David. They're putting the roof on, there's a little bit of delay. With some of the subs have had some issues. I mean, the brickwork's going up great, they're putting the skirting on. The roof is supposed to be started this week, but I'm gonna just advise them to connect to the existing and then look at having someone else come in after the fact and replace the community center roof.
The joint can't be that complex. I've been watching it too.
There's always a fear, and I agree with the contractor, there's always a fear when you do a roof that old to a new roof, there's always that possibility.
Well, I agree with that.
But the main thing is he saw some serious rust issues up top, which in time, maybe short amount of time, they'll start leaking. If it hasn't already, we've had those leaks over there before.
That leak that I found in the community center by the entrance to the kitchen, David, did you ever trace that? Do you think that was a rust issue? Or just a poor joint?
I don't remember. We sealed something up on top up there a little bit, but I don't recall exactly what it was. I wasn't up there, so I'm not sure.
I don't mind spending the money, but we gotta get our money's worth. I'm sorry, that is just, in my opinion, that is too much money for the scope of work.
Well, in my view, I think we can get it lower, plus we budgeted $50,000 in the Public Facilities Fund to do some renovation work, and I truly think we need to do some inside work to the existing, the rental room, hallway, and the
Floors.
kitchen. The floor is a big issue.
Yes.
I talked to the architect about that for after the fact, once the senior fitness room is open. I talked to the foreman last week about the board doing a pre-opening tour of the facility in May, when they're close to completion, but they're still doing some final run-ins, where you can actually see how the senior center is compared to the existing building. And it's gonna be like day and night, you know that. But,
Yes. Yeah.
but the walls around the existing rental room, the community center, there's some soft spots that needs to be taken off. Half the baseboard's gone, it won't stay anymore. The carpet should have been gone 20 years ago.
The kitchen to the outside, that outside door, that really is, that concrete's in bad shape too.
The window blinds, the windows, I mean, there's some discussion we need to have.
I agree.
And I'd like to do, take the board over before a meeting in May and have just a pre-walkthrough.
Probably a real good idea, so.
My request continues to date to be determined, so I don't know when I'll get the number back from the board.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this? Okay. Next, crack fill ceiling contract, Mr. Rankin.
I will defer to Mr. Brandon on this street project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're bringing back, basically the same approval that we've asked for the last 2 years with Crasco. This will be the third year that, they've offered the same price, per pound. I like the way that they have done the work for the town over the last 3 years. They've done a thorough job of cleaning out the cracks prior to doing the work. One of the things that Steve does for us is that he does not, guarantee me a certain linear footage, because every crack is a little different in size, and he's not sure how many pounds it's gonna take to fill each one. We've got some that are 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide, and we've got some that are 3/4 of an inch wide. So, you know, obviously it takes less to do that. His team that he brings in, they keep all the box tops for me. They show me the boxes before they open them, and then they bring me the boxes after they're opened, so that I know exactly how many pounds, I know how many pounds are in each box, so then they bring me the box tops when they get done, and we go through and verify that the amount of pounds is what they said they put down. For the last 2 years, this contractor has not been happy with the fact that he ran out of the amount that we were paying for before a street was done, so he finished the street. Last year was about another $400 worth of material that he used to complete that street and make sure that it was done. And the year before that, it was a similar situation. I don't remember exactly how many pounds they used. In light of that, in light of the fact that it's the same price that it has been for the last 3 years, and we're very pleased with how the work has been, I would recommend that we go ahead and accept Crasco's bid of $1.48, or hang on, am I looking at that right? Yeah, $1.48 per pound. And he knows that our budget limit is 25,000, and so he set aside the 16,800 pounds for us. And I do want to apologize to the board. I should have had this on last month. This is the exact same board meeting that we did it last year, but he wasn't ready to come in until the first week of April. There's a good possibility they'll move in tomorrow if the board approves this contract tonight.
Well, this would be good, so.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
that's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
And we're primarily looking at Reed?
We're primarily looking at the Reed subdivision because we're looking at Reed, Garden, and Scholt. There's some, we have done Garden and Scholt in the past, but there's some cracks there that are substantial and could use some additional crack sealing in them. And I've been out with the town manager over the last day or two here trying to mark out the proposed patching areas in the Reed subdivision so that they don't end up putting any crack seal in where we're actually going to be replacing asphalt. but those three areas were our primary focus because, of the fact that that's where we wanna, we had the estimates for doing the chip sealing later this year. And so, I was talking with the town manager earlier today. I honestly don't think $25,000 worth of crack seal is gonna be enough to get all the cracks in the Reed subdivision, so I'm not sure we'll even get onto Schultz or Garden before they run out of material. I would propose that we go ahead and do the chip seal this later this year as proposed, but then more than likely, part of the crack seal next year will be to bring Crasco or whoever the company ends up being back in, and we'll have to crack seal over the top of some of the chip seal. I mean, some of the chip seal will fill some of those smaller cracks, but for the most part, we found in Bella Vista a few years ago when we tried to do that, the cracks mirror through the crack seal, or through the chip seal pretty quickly. So, you have to crack seal in one way or another, whether it's before or after. We've tried to do it before so that the chip seal kind of covers up the crack seal and it looks like a more uniform street. But it's definitely not unusual to see crack seal on top of asphalt or on top of chip seal. You know, it's just a routine maintenance type item, so.
That's not compromising the street at all.
No, it's still protecting the street. The only thing is if we were to do the crack seal before we put the chip seal down, then it would look a little more uniform once the chip seal goes over the top of it. You know, we can only do as much as we've got funds to do. So, depending on what our patching price comes in at, if our patching price was to come in at less, which I don't anticipate because I'm pretty good at marking up the pavement as to what needs to be replaced. We're looking, I mean, we were visiting with a gentleman that built it was one of the first homes in the Reed subdivision. He still lives there. Troy and I were visiting with him earlier today. He moved in April 1st, 1978. They paved the roads the first week of August, 1978. So in August of this year, those roads will be 40 years old. And for the most part, you expect a 20-year to 25-year shelf life out of your asphalt streets. So we've done pretty well. The kicker is when Troy and I are trying to pick what needs to be repaired, we could probably close our eyes and throw a colored rock and say that needs to be fixed. You know, I mean, it's really hard to determine what needs to be done. But as good as Goodrich Avenue turned out a couple years ago when we went in and patched that significantly and then put the chip seal on it, we're hoping for a similar result over in the Reed subdivision. And obviously Garden and Schultz were ahead of the game there a little bit as far as getting the chip seal on. So hopefully we'll continue to hang on to those roads.
Are you gonna do are those cul-de-sacs part of this?
The cul-de-sacs off of
Shirley
Reed, yes,
and-
yes.
You know, it's River, Olive, Reed, Melody Lane,
David Court,
so.
Shirley and Catherine,
Were you gonna do Melody also? Okay,
provided the bids come back proper,
okay,
so.
okay.
Melody would have probably the least amount of cracks still to patch.
Yeah,
It's had some.
with Melody, the biggest problem has been the width and
Yep.
getting enough in there. Now, there's been a couple more cracks come in, but they're small. It'll just be getting the fissures filled so that the chip seal will look proper and not follow the contours. That's gonna be the critical item. Something I was thinking about, next year, we should think seriously about Old Homestead. Some of those cracks are getting significant again.
And it's been about, I wanna say it's been 6 years since we were in there with the crack, so maybe 7. I'd
Have we ever
to-
crack sealed Rogers?
Portions,
Okay.
I was gonna say Rogers was pretty bad.
so,
Well, there's places that I think probably would be nice to catch it. So maybe look at those. Rogers is so large that I just don't know, that would be one whole, $25,000 bid all by itself probably, wouldn't it?
oh, I would
As large as that
anticipate
place
we could
is.
probably do 2 years before we finish Rogers.
Okay.
Just
I was-
that,
yeah, it's
I
pretty big.
mean, not that the roads are in that bad of shape, it's just that crack sealing is one of those quote-unquote inexpensive maintenance items to do, but with, I mean,
Right.
we've had $25,000, I wanna say for the last 4 or 5 years has been our dollar value, 20 to 25,000 is what we have done. You know, I could easily spend $150,000 or $200,000 on crack sealing every year, but we just don't have that kind of money to spend on that. So we're doing what we can. I like City of Loveland's philosophy, which is to touch every road every 7 years. We're not there yet, but I think we're getting closer to that, to where we could get ourselves on a cycle that every 6 to 7, maybe 8 years, we're going back. Okay, we're going to Rogers, okay, we're going to Stevens, we're going to Bella Vista, we're in Old Town, we're, you know, doing that. I would love to just have a routine set up and says, okay, this is where we go. We're not there yet, but we keep trying, so.
I'm actually very happy and very proud of the fact that we have caught up. You know, we've gone through decades of deferred maintenance because we just haven't had the money. It was nobody's fault, there just wasn't the money. And I'm actually very pleased with how far we've come in such a short time, considering what we've had to do. So I'm actually very pleased with where we're at. And it would be, I'd like to get to the cycle you're talking about, David, and I agree with you. I think it's coming. You know, if we keep our nose to the grindstone and keep a sense of perspective, I think we can get to those places. That's like the sidewalks. 62,000, was it 62,000? Isn't that what we have a year? That's not a lot.
Yeah, about 65 to 68 now.
But we're getting there. You know, and that's an important thing. We're getting there. We're not getting there fast, but we're also not in debt. So all this stuff falls in that same category.
And as David, just to piggyback on what David said, we're getting close, other than really Grand Avenue Reynolds, which is a standalone project. That's a whole reconstruction.
Yes.
It's not even reconstruction, we just need to build a road.
Yeah.
But
Reynolds, yeah.
And then we looked hard at Grand Avenue, which is a truck route, basically from Sturkle to the top of the cemetery. And my fear is, if we have, and it's not a guessing game, it's just you can't predict, but the asphalt is blowing out as you crest the top of the cemetery hill. That's not gonna last all summer, in my opinion. And then 21, 32 and a half, the trucks are just tearing that intersection up. So I'm hoping we have funds to at least patch some significant portions of those two spots. And we'll do a mid-year conversation once, probably a late summer, early fall conversation, once the money is assessed at that time.
I'm 21 and 66, is that CDOT or is that us?
CDOT's 2166.
Or Rock County?
Yes.
Could the county almost was up there by the cemetery?
They've already done theirs, they just redid all their sections last year, yep. So,
They stopped with that eastbound.
well, I don't mean to interrupt Troy. County Road 32 and a half from Sturkle Boulevard out to County Road 21 is starting to show some wear and tear. And when the town annexed that in 2008, 2009, 2010, so 8 years ago, the county had that listed on their scheduled regular maintenance in the next 2 years after that. So 2012, 2013 is when they were anticipating that would need work. So they were more than happy to have us take that over. So.
Is that a discussion that needs to be had sometime in the future? You know, the agreement was that what we operated under was 32 and a half was going to be resurfaced by that subdivision. And that was the terms in which we approved that subdivision. Well, that subdivision has never happened. And this is an incredible burden for the town to bear, considering the fact that it's the oil trucks that are doing most of the damage on that. Is there any method that we can get some revenue stream to fix that? Is there anybody in this, is there any state funds or anything? After they took all our severance taxes?
Do we have any ability to take it off the truck route?
That is a kind of a win, lose, lose, lose situation. Let me explain that. There are, as we did Sturkle from 32 and a half to Goodrich, or to Graham, sorry, that was a dole application.
Yes.
And at the truck route, and we could show oil and gas on that truck route, 32 and a half would be the same thing. We get applied, we might have a good chance to get some, at least some 50-50 funding, but we got to come up with the match. That's the good part. The loose part is the West Farms PUD, planned unit development, never transpired. Mr. Jensen has been trying to sell it. I heard rumor that it was sold. I've not confirmed that. I was working with a developer last year. It's not a developer. They basically wanted to mine the floodplain on West Farm. But part of that was we would have to, I talked to Kenner about that. Basically, we'd have to develop a new public improvements agreement, negate the existing one with the new owner. And the first thing I mentioned to them was to pave the road. And they didn't blink an eye, because these mining companies, they're in partnership with these larger paving companies and haulers. And, you know, they can do that in a heartbeat. They're talking about a 2-inch mill and overlay. And right now, our bid from our person that we use, Mr. Pat Hill, was like patching, crack sealing, and chip sealing. But that hasn't come to fruition. And the other lose part of my comment was, we took that from Will County a year or two before they were about to do road work. To answer your question, if we de-annex and get that road back to them, we start a bad relationship with Will County government. And I've seen that because other towns have tried to do the same thing, and not a county commissioner has been positive about that.
Well, I don't doubt they'd be happy about it.
No.
I'm not talking about, it was a designated truck route. The county designated it that, on our road.
We had a truck route before we annexed it. Yeah.
But
And
the truck route, was it a truck route down to, what's that, 25.5 and over before we annexed it?
since I've been here, the truck route's always been 32.5 around Sturkle and down Grand Avenue. And county did have the truck route down to 25.5, no, 25, and then they go straight north. Yeah.
Which would make us all kinds of friends along there.
And I've had some people say, you know, just ban Grand Avenue as a truck route. You know, that's.
Legally, we can't, can we?
You can, you have that authority. But you open up other issues with Will County that may, in long term, be an issue for the town of Platteville.
But if it becomes a situation where we can't maintain that road as a truck route, becomes an undue burden on the town,
I agree with that.
then the county can't hardly blame us for saying, we can't support this weight on the road.
Has anybody talked to a county commissioner about this?
2 years ago, I talked to two of the commissioners at that time. And they asked about the West Farm PUD, and that time frame hasn't lapsed yet as far as their vesting period. So it was just a put on hold conversation. That's when, it was closer to 3 years ago actually, that's when the two commissioners I met with brought up some other communities in South County that would do flagpole annexations, and they want to do maintenance on the roads that they flagpole on. County roads, dirt roads, and asphalt roads. And they told me directly that they would never cooperate with those communities ever again.
Right.
But, so I can open up some dialogue with that.
Well, you don't wanna piss the county off either.
I don't think
Well,
talking
you
to
always have
us is gonna
discussion
make them
about
mad. You
We-
can have the discussion.
See where they would be able to play with this on it, or.
Yeah, maybe we can work something out. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, we worked something out with them regarding that intersection.
We did, and there was a give and take with that one, and I would-
Commissioner Kirkmeyer was very gracious and very forthcoming on that.
And I know the grants that we've submitted, or I've submitted over the dollar grants in previous years, the county has helped support those applications. And we just have a very solid relationship with the local county government right now, and we have for a number of years.
absolutely.
But, going off topic, we're still talking about roads, but a whole different road right now. But, I'll bring that back up, because we're gonna do a mid-year review in May.
That is really a good topic, and that is something that I think, I know you have a good relationship with Commissioner Kirkmeyer, and I do too. I think it's worth testing that relationship.
Well, I mean.
Because if this is a serious consideration, and it's not, Grand Avenue isn't destroyed now but we all know it's on its way. With every 18-wheeler that goes down there, you know, there's just, and we're not, we should be capturing truck taxes, but the state, in their wisdom, has chosen to not give us that. So that would be a really healthy conversation to have, Troy. I really think so.
We'll bring it up here. David, do you have anything else on that, Jackson?
No,
Yeah, you started this.
that's all my fault.
Well, I'm glad you didn't. Thank you.
Does anybody have anything further on this subject?
Not this subject.
I think we've exhausted it.
I have a question on another subject, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
If you could, we need a motion.
vote on this.
Sorry.
Oh, I
Before you go
apologize,
on.
I'm sorry. Here we got off kilter. May I have a motion on this subject, please?
I move to approve the renewal of the agreement for services with Crasco LLC for crack filling in the town of Platteville Streets at a rate of $1.48 per pound at a total amount not to exceed $25,000.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Adrian Sandoval,
Aye.
Kim Nelson,
Aye.
Michael Cowper,
Aye.
Hope Morris,
Yes.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark.
Alright.
Motion carried. Thank you, Mary. You're always saving the day. Next, reports. Police chief.
Larry had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me address Larry's question
Oh,
first.
okay, this has to do with this water lease that was in the consent agenda, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, Jay.
Yeah, exactly. It's a real quick question, actually. This is $2,500 for a half acre, but is that pretty much market price?
Troy, you wanna catch that?
Are reasonably within the realm, or is that some kind of,
This
I
goes,
don't wanna categorize that.
I'll do my best. I did not bring, I have the bill laying on my desk so I could go get it. I want to say that, our shares this year our cost for those shares with the ditch are in the $1,800 to $1,900 range. So basically, what the board did last year and kind of what the history, when we dug out the history with the Sarchets, was covering the cost of, to make sure that the town share of our fees was covered for that amount of water. Does that make sense? We pay the ditch an assessment for our water each year. We pay the ditch board, and I wanna say it's between $1,800 and $1,900. I'd have to go grab the bill to make sure of that.
Okay.
And so the 2,500 was what we had done last year with them. And the most important part to this board right now is that we show the consumptive use of the water so that we don't end up with somebody saying that we haven't been using those shares, so we no longer have a right to those shares. So at this point, I think the concern was to find somebody that was willing, such as Sarchets, who have since the 70s leased those shares. The kicker was, it was well documented in the early 70s, or in the 70s and early 80s, and then the documentation went away. So we are getting it documented again now to show that we've got the consumptive use.
Let me rephrase my question. If I were wanting to lease water from X, the unknown party, for a half an acre foot, is that $2,500 the amount that I would reasonably expect to pay, or would that be more or less than what I might have to pay?
I honestly
I'm not
don't
finding,
know.
I'm not finding fault with the amount.
No.
Let me make myself clear. I'm not finding fault with the amount that we're charging.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how closely that reflects the market price.
Troy, can I answer that?
I was gonna add to it, go ahead.
Okay. Your concerns are valid, that it's nowhere near the value of water. However, what we get from this is so much more valuable than the value of the water, that more than makes up.
I understand the consumptive rights portion, totally, I truly do, and I'm trying to separate these as two different issues.
Yeah, as two different issues, you're exactly right, it doesn't even come close, but unfortunately, it's not, they're linked.
I understand there's two different parts of the equation, and I had no argument with the price that the town's getting, I'm not
But
calling
if
that
you were
into
gonna go
question.
out on the market for that water, no, you couldn't get it for that. I think we can all agree on that, right?
If I may, several years ago, partner for 5 years ago now, I remember Brad Hagan, our water engineer from Civil Resources, when he started looking at our ditch, and we figured out, every year is different, depending on how many calls, we have 3 calls on the ditch, right, 4?
Up to 3, yeah.
Up to 3 calls. And seepage and weather, I mean, he does all that math calculation, so our 1324 share fluctuates. You know, between 400 some and almost 600 or 600 acre feet. When I asked him about leasing it for irrigation water at that time, he said that was between 32 to 34 bucks an acre foot. Or not, sorry, a share. No, it was acre foot, wasn't it?
Acre foot.
Acre foot. So, can we make more money off it? Yeah. Is that our intent? No, we've all talked about that. But it's not like CBT, that's a whole different ballgame. Now, the value of that ditch water, we could sell for probably several million, depending on market value, at least that's what it was, I think it's 1.5 million at the time, about 5 years ago.
Or could he sell the seniority?
I'm not, I guess I'm trying to split hairs, maybe
Well, and
unnecessarily.
to give you historical content here, for years and years, this town put that out for bid, and only one person ever bid on it, and that was the Sarchet family. And every year we get a letter from them bidding on it, nobody else would, so that's how it historically just perpetuated to them buying it every year.
Another thing that plays into this, Larry, is that, Platteville ditch is, you know, of course, river water, and that's not very good water. CBT is drinking water, treatable drinking water, so there is a huge difference in quality also. And I'm sure that would make a big difference in price, right?
They're both raw water though.
Yeah, they're both raw water, one's more easily treated than the
I
other.
don't wanna be misunderstood, I'm not calling into question anything that's going on here.
Right, I
I'm
understand.
simply, from my own knowledge, because I might be a water investor at some point in my life.
You don't have enough problems, huh?
You do roofs.
Well, I won't go into that personal issues. No, I'm just curious as to whether that is, where that fits in the realm of.
We're giving out a good deal.
I can,
And that's fine, I have no problem with that either.
out of curiosity, I can get a hold of Brad, in a couple weeks and ask him what the current lease per acre foot is, just for
Perfect.
curiosity purposes.
Sure.
And it fluctuates probably ditch by ditch, I'm assuming?
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, this is, these rights are some of the most, this is the 4th most senior right on the South Platte. It's an 1862 right.
Okay.
So, but that's the first call. The second call is in 1912 or 1914, and the third call is in the 40s or 50s. So we lose seniority with each call. But because of that because it's the 4th most senior, these are very valuable rights. But as has been reiterated at this point, that showing the consumptive use for the town is more valuable at this time.
Agreed.
So.
Thank you.
Further illuminate that, or just as a postscript, that we've had most of this water in excess of 100 years. And I've always said that my tenure on the board, I have never had guts enough to sell out that one. It has been discussed, selling off the water, because it's so valuable. And that was always my comment, is I never wanted to be the one blamed for that. But no, your comments are well founded, Larry. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, we're gonna go to our long-suffering police chief and let him talk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything that I really necessarily want to add. our new line officers are working solo on their own. We're moving right along. So that's all I got really. I'm happy to answer any questions though.
I have a question.
Sure.
We're not planning to arm our teachers, are we?
I can honestly say that under Superintendent Rangel, that is absolutely not gonna happen.
Okay, good.
That may be something that later on, if it resurfaces, but as of now, that's not an action plan at all.
Because you guys, besides the resource officer, you guys go in through the buildings also.
Yep, absolutely. We're all in this with each other, so we're in and out of there, but the SROs are there all the time, so I don't think there'll be a need here to arm our teachers.
And you had your active shooter training?
That was yesterday, it went very, very well. We hosted it at the high school. Every year we kind of rotate it around. It was at the high school this year, next would be South Valley Middle School, then the elementary school, just so we all know the layout and we can work with all the schools, so it went very well.
Did you monitor it?
No, but my 16-year-old participated as a role player, he loved it.
He didn't get shot with a taser? So you didn't give specific instructions?
I'm sorry to say that he got shot once.
Yeah. You did? I've been through the training many times in my background, but yeah, I miss it once in a while. It's fun. It's training, I mean, not the topic, but the training part. It is a valuable training, not to, just to add to Carl, I think, you know, Key and I have talked, and getting these officers, especially new officers that we have on staff, to know those hallways, those buildings, those exits, and then on top of it, get to know the staff, not just administration, but custodians and cooks, and they're the ones that hear what really goes on. No offense against the teachers, but they're the ones that, they're the ones that hear what's going on, being sitting there. Because like my son, he's not gonna talk around the football coach, he'll talk around the lady serving the straight, because, you know, they have this different relationship, you
The
know.
janitor mopping the floor.
Yep, yep. You gotta learn from lessons from the past, and that's
That's
something
right.
we're trying to still do as a society, but that's my soapbox, I'll stop.
Are those, I realize those are training exercises. Is anything being changed because of recent occurrences in training?
Yeah, this is a live and learn, and that's the unfortunate part. We learn so much every time there's an active shooter in one of these schools. So I think we learn something from all of these, and we work it out, and what we wouldn't do and what we would. Just for the record, I mean, well, our officers would respond in if there was an active shooter in our
That was
school. I'm
gonna
very
ask
confident
next.
to say that. So, that's, and I'm not making any excuses for the officer that not, but I'm very sure of the SROs and the team that we have, that we would all go in there and handle things the way they should be, and appropriately.
I had no doubt.
I'd like to bring something up, because I know
Yes,
Carl
sir.
won't. The side part to this, or actually part of it is, Carl, over the course of his career here, not just as chief, as an officer, they take every report, every threat, every suggested threat very seriously, and they act upon it. I'm not criticizing any other agencies, but I give kudos to Carl and his officers. They don't look aside at anything at all, and they take it very seriously. And if somebody makes a threat and they have to go to jail, no matter what the age, then so be it. That's how we approach things. So, all politics and everything else aside, we take care of the schools. That's always been pretty strong with this problem.
I appreciate that, and that's why you're the chief, Carl.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have anything for the chief? Okay. Next is Public Works Director, who's been silent all night. Now's your chance, David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of minor things to add to my written report, just updates on some of the bullet items. If anybody has any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Third bullet item, under the wastewater system, we haven't received a contract, an agreement with AST yet, but we're getting close. I'm having another conversation on Friday with them that I think is gonna hopefully answer some final questions and push us over the hump on how to do this. Part of the problem, not problem, but part of their concerns was the way that we had originally written the agreement, they felt like they were on the hook if our lagoon went over the limit, if we violated something with the state. And they're like, well, we're only doing this tiny little portion, so if that's the case, how can we be on the hook for that? So worked with Kendra's office to make sure that we kind of reworded that to a point that I think they're agreeable to it, that if it's proven that somehow something, I mean, if we end up in violation, then they shut down right away, and then we start backtracking to figure out where the violation came from. And if it ends up being them, then they'll help rectify it and help get it taken care of with the state. But I'm pretty comfortable saying that they're gonna be treating such a small percentage of what we're doing that I don't foresee that happening. But they just wanted that wording in such a way that they weren't on the hook if we violated when they're on our property. And I don't blame them for that. The other thing that we're dealing with right now is I thought that the engineering company that had connected us with AST was hired by AST, and AST was hoping that we were hiring the engineering company, and so at this point, we're trying to work out the details. The town doesn't want to hire the engineering company. AST stands to benefit more from this than the town. I mean, we stand to benefit quite a bit if this comes to fruition and works well. But AST stands to benefit in that they can sell this system not only to Platteville, but to any other lagoon system in Colorado if they get through the state process and through the state health department. So our contention is that they need to have an agreement with either professional engineering company, that's PEC, the company that connected us, which, because, you know, I feel somewhat of a moral obligation to keep PEC involved because they were the ones that brought AST to us and us to AST. That's between AST and the professional engineering company. So they're working on final details on that, and that's part of what the hang up is right now. So, but I have good confidence that we'll have an agreement in place and that we'll have that thing up and running in the next, I would guess, 60 days or so. Second bullet point under the water distribution system, we did collect the once every 6 months, first 6 months, last 6 months, we have to do lead and copper. This month, out of our 20 samples, we did not have any that were at or above the action level, which I believe this is the second year now that we have not had any that were even remotely close. So we're in good shape right now.
Dave, on that?
Yes.
Can you put the results on that, in the water bill next month? Because I know there's a lot of talk I've seen that people complain about our water and the way it tastes, and they have to, you know,
Chlorine levels.
and stuff like that. So, if the community's where, you know, maybe that'll stop some of the talk and concern that people are saying that there's concern that we always had high lead here in town. I think our water tastes great. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't smell any chlorine.
We did have about a 48-hour period, somewhere between 36 hours and 48 hours, where the smell was a little stronger. It was, when we tested it, it was at 0.39 here at Town Hall. We went to a place on the south end of town, it was 0.34. It has to be at least 0.2, and it has to be below 4.0. So we were well within those parameters. It may have been as high as a 0.6 or a 0.7 at one point when you're starting to smell it. The thing with chlorine, you have to take that sample, that test right away, because it will evaporate out. So and to answer your question, Troy, we should be able to, and I'll talk with the town manager, but I'm sure that putting those results in is for most people, they're not even gonna be able to understand the sheet, but we can put that in, or we could just put a blurb as to where we were at. I don't know which would be better.
Just to communicate that they, that we're meeting their requirements.
But if somebody in the future, if somebody, you know, if you do experience, or you know somebody that's experiencing chlorine smell, if you let let a pitcher like this sit for 10-15 minutes, all that's gonna evaporate off, and then it all just dissipates into the air. So
we don't drink it, we just breathe it.
And under the parks, the irrigation system at the ball field has been activated, and the guys started activating some of the other smaller systems here at Town Hall. We'll be doing, probably be getting to Rogers and to some of the other smaller ones that we've got around town. They installed the discharge pipes at both the wells today. The lining is already in place. The discharge pipes are in place. He's got to build the final section where the meter and our isolation valve goes. And then he'll be back next week to drop the pumps in. And he dropped off the VFDs, and I've notified our electrician that those are there so that we can get those installed over the next several days, so.
VFD means?
Variable frequency drives for the new, pumps at Riverview and at Lincoln.
I knew what it meant.
We all do that, right?
Sorry,
It regulates water pressure.
so. Are there any other questions that I can attempt to answer?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Troy did one question I was gonna ask you. Now, Rowell County Road 21 and 66. I don't know if
Not
it's your
ours.
question or Chief's question. Is there any way that the county can put in a flashing yellow light before you, apparently people don't know that's an intersection because they keep ramming into each other. You guys have a big one just the other day?
Yeah, we
How many
had,
cars was it?
we had one this afternoon, same intersection, so they're there a lot, unfortunately.
Brand new. I was there, I had to go off.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh my God. Yeah, can we, Troy, I don't know who answers these questions.
I'll reach out to see. I talked to Karen Schneiders a few months ago about that, when we were finished, last year, when we were finishing the Pell study. And it goes a little deeper than that. 66 from essentially Lyons to Platteville, they started their own 66 coalition group, just like 85 did years ago. The mayor and I used to attend, and they invited us back to, we stopped attending because there really wasn't any benefit to Platteville, at least in our perspective, because they're completing a Pell now, but it's through just information-wise. The state of Colorado is broken up in transportation regions. From County Road 19 over to Lyons, and then south is called the Dr. Cog, the Denver Regional Council of Government. From 19 this way is Upper Front Range. The improvements that they did at 19, 17, so on and so forth, were through funding from the Dr. Cog Transportation. Our region, I'm not trying to throw anybody out the bus because I don't want Johnny Olson getting mad at me, Director CDOT. But through our Pell, we talked briefly about County Road 21 improvements to do the turning lanes and everything like 19 has. The decision was not to invest in County Road 21 at this time, but to discuss a future improvement with turning lanes and better signage and so forth. Because that was the last, as far as the last 2 or 3 years, that's been the discussion on County Road 21. I've emphasized to them the importance of the safety. There's hardly any time I drove out 66 where, especially during rush hour, people get frustrated, they'll pull out in front of you and you're only 50 foot away, or they'll just blow the stop sign north-south. I've seen it every month, so.
And so far, Upper Front Range has patted us on the head and ignored us.
Can we put a sign up? Are we allowed to do it?
No, it's not our jurisdiction.
Let me reach out to CDOT and,
Actually, it would be the county. If you want to sign, you would want to put signs on the county road rather than 66, I believe, because the county is where they're jumping the gun.
but those, just like Main Street, Steve, all those stop signs on Main Street are CDOT because they regulate their right of way. So
Oh,
stop
even on the county road, it's a CDOT sign. Okay.
The sign belongs to basically the origin of the road that maintains that road.
Okay.
So that's what it comes down to. Sorry, I don't know if that answers your question or not. but I'll
Yeah, I just,
process
you
it.
know, I've seen, you know, not since we've taken, you know, flagpole there's been accidents. I just don't know why people don't know how to stop. I mean, it's not, I'm not seeing the accidents going north and south, it's going east and west.
Oh, really?
They're rear-ending each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened that
See,
last.
well, the ones I've
stopping
experienced with were north
turn.
and south.
And the people behind them aren't stopping.
They're texting and they're not paying attention.
And I've seen them just go off around the ditch and come back.
Maybe brakes are optional on cars now. I know turn signals obviously are.
Paying attention while you're driving is optional.
Yeah,
I know the accident rates at 19 especially have gone way down since those turning lanes were put in because at least
Yes.
it's an option.
Well, I think with the amount of calls that the police department and the fire department have to go to these accidents,
acceleration lanes as well, turning lanes, but, Carl and I talked last year about since we flagpoled 66 and 85, 3 miles, a little over 3.5 on 66, he's keeping those stats. I'm gonna use those, later this year to start talking about some intersection improvements at 21. So that's what we need, we have to have trigger some stats, so.
Okay.
You want to die before the state does anything.
Okay.
Is that true?
I have a couple for you, David. This AST, is the state given any kind of permission or acknowledgement towards giving us more time to implement this and test this system?
No, they haven't given us any indication. They told us we will hear in April or May when they issue the permit.
Okay.
And they'll give us the compliance order to go with it.
Okay, and if AST puts this system in, how closely are they gonna be monitoring their effluent, their discharge into our, I assume they're gonna discharge into our, did you tell me the wetland?
No, it will
Or pond
be,
two?
it will be discharged back into the same location that it's pulled from.
Oh,
So
okay,
if we pull it from, the initial plan at this point is to pull it from right where the influent goes into pond 1, and they will have a pipe that runs to their system, and they'll have a discharge pipe that runs from their system, and both of those will be basically at the same location. Not exact location, because they're not gonna be trying to pull their effluent back in and through their system. But, basically, it's gonna be put back in, it's taken out of pond 1, it's gonna be put back in pond 1, so that it goes through the full treatment process. Now, if we, test this system over in front of the wetlands or downstream of the wetlands, then the water that is pulled out will be put back at basically the same place that it's pulled out of.
And that machinery can handle the solids, the viscosity of what goes into
They
pond
say
1?
it can. That's part of what we're gonna find out.
That is an intriguing system. I mean, really, I've been very interested in. Monitor that thing, 'cause
They are gonna have to deal with some type of a screen themselves
That's
for
what I
their
would
pilot
think.
system.
Probably a revolving screen just like that.
I don't know. That's up to them to bring it in and put it in and see what it does.
And you're gonna be able to monitor the discharge side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll be grabbing samples, and part of what the agreement that Kendra and I worked on, with them is that the town will provide, right now, we only have to take samples down once a month from the lagoon, because that's what our permit requires, is our testing. We happen to take our tests, our samples, we grab our samples the first week of every month. We try to grab it the first few days. Then if for some reason we have something that's out of whack, we've got 3 more weeks to figure out what's going on, and then take some more samples down and get an average that's below what the state requires, so we don't have a violation. I know some operators that choose to operate their system and take their samples the last day of the month, and I don't hold my breath that well. So, but what we have offered to do as part of our agreement was to collect and take the samples to the lab in Brighton once a week versus once a month.
Terrific.
But AST will be picking up the tab. They'll have the account for all the extra samples that are being done. But we will provide the manpower to grab the samples and take them down just to see what kind of results we're getting.
So we'll be able to have a pretty detailed graph of what's occurring, and we'll know relatively quickly if things do start to go in a positive direction.
That's the plan. I mean, right now, the state doesn't like 12 data points, for a new system. They would like to have, 4 to 8 data points per week, or per month, I mean, to plot something to see what it's doing and how it's doing it. So that's part of what AST's goal is with the state, to be able to show them what kind of results they're getting, warm weather, cold weather, warmer water temperatures, colder water temperatures, all that kind of thing. That's part of AST's goal, because obviously their ultimate is to get this system approved by the state health department for use in the state of Colorado, so that they can promote it to other entities besides Platteville.
How long do you expect them to be in town?
we've set the agreement up for a year.
Okay, so it covers
Warm weather, cold weather, that was the intent, because we're not gonna get it in before cold weather's gone at this point.
Anybody have anything else?
And we have our fingers crossed this pilot system works, cause it literally could save this town millions of dollars
Millions of dollars.
on what it's gonna take to get to our permit requirements.
Yep.
So, we have our fingers crossed to see.
Hey, we're trying. That's the main thing.
David, congratulations on your 100% on your audit.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Had to brag on the guys a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. Now we have a report from our esteemed attorney,
Who failed to give you a written report?
who has failed to give us a written report.
That's all right.
Gotta be
I
some-
fired her before the
That's
meeting.
right. Oh, okay. I apologize for that, but I don't have all that much going on. I'm working on a couple development applications with town planner. I was discussing some of the purchasing policy issues with Troy. I would say also, and I don't know if you put this in your report, but KLX did get their final inspection, and this was that explosive bunker, you remember? It
Yes.
took a long time for them to get everything they needed for that, and so they finally did get everything they needed to get their final inspection, so that's completed. But I don't have anything else to report.
That's a good thing, right?
Right, that's always a good thing, you don't need to hear from me.
Does anybody have anything for our attorney? Okay, thank you, Kendra. Next, we have our manager.
Let me add to a couple items in our report. Clifton Larson Allen, when I spoke to their representatives that were here a couple weeks ago, and David Green, we're looking at presenting the final audit report to the board in May. Maybe the second meeting, but we're trying to shoot for the first meeting. They're here for a week. Irene and Devin and Mary provided information upon request. David Green was here that whole week as well as our accountant, which I truly appreciate, because he's been a tremendous asset since we contracted with him. And just a little knowledge, and it went very smooth. I know they always have their management discussions, so they talk to me about any problems, issues, embezzlement, the whole 9 yards. And I think they talked to, did they talk to you this time instead of the mayor, or did they talk to Steve?
No, they talked to me for about 15, 20 minutes.
Well, you were gone and they asked for help and she disappeared.
See, Hope knows when they go to the ground.
I think I was at the office then.
But,
Yeah, he did catch me. It was very interesting, a very candid conversation.
but we just really talk about the financial well-being, and we look at any debt, and then you always want to, during audit, look at potential fraudulent activities, look at your policies. And we talked about the investment policy and the purchasing policy, they're in line with what we have going with those.
He phrased that question probably 5 different ways, 5 different times.
Yeah, me too. But we've had some pretty good audits. We'll get dinged again like we always do, because I don't have enough staffing to where in the past to do the checks and balances by having Mr. Greenhead as our accountant helping oversee. Mainly he does our financials as a third party or third party person, but
That adds a layer.
and then we're bringing his wife Ashley, who's basically doing payroll for other communities and helps us out to oversee when we bring her in on a quarterly or biannual basis to do the same thing. It's always good to have checks and balances when it comes to government money. Speaking of the Sarasota loss control audit, I know David's pretty proud of his 100%, but Carl also got 100% as well. Thank you.
Carl.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Admin missed 1 point, thanks to the town manager, no fault to Mary. But
Would the town manager trip over a fold in the rug or something?
no.
But overall, 121%.
121% is the highest rating we've ever had with Sarasota. We did pursue some extra credit points, I think 9, and that bumped us up, that helped us out quite a bit.
That'll save us a significant amount of money, won't it?
But we're hoping, because you have to do it in longevity. And the 97% is the highest we've ever had, and that's because I missed 1 point, that's my fault. Because the policy they have, I don't really agree with, but we're negotiating.
You can negotiate with an insurance company.
Believe it or not, they have changed their standard and requirements over the years, different back and forth, and they're open-minded, I like services, they're willing to be flexible, and they've changed their standards this last year with the whole audit committee, so it's kinda nice. But bottom line is loss control is basically written policies or training to reduce both, all types of liability that we may have, everything from workers' comp, property casualty, to lawsuits, you name it. And, I'm proud that we scored so high.
We haven't had an exec session dealing with that subject matter in what, 5, 6 years? And that's pretty good, that's pretty good, guys.
You're not gonna water mine.
Thank
you. But no, that, yeah, we had some pretty good conversations, and they thought we're a small organization, the checks and balances, and, making sure the board sees the paid bills and the financials, and we put eyes on everything, internal controls, we do pretty well, so.
That's what I conveyed to him. I said I didn't think we could do more than we were, we can be more diligent. I didn't think, in my opinion, which as a layman, that probably doesn't count for much.
Well, I'm very fortunate to have a good staff that manages our finances. That being the Veterans Memorial, I did file a claim, as if you haven't heard, there's a car 2 Saturdays ago that Carl took the accident report. That struck that first, the light pole at the entrance of the cemetery, right in the corner of the memorial. I spoke with, both Mr. Evans and also, Jim, the contractor on the masonry. The price to fix that will vary depending on the conduit. The conduit was damaged below that caisson. That's a 9-foot caisson, 3 foot up, 6 foot down. So I filed a claim against the young man's insurance carrier. I did that last week. They were supposed to call me by noon today, the adjuster, and he, of course, had not heard from him. So I will contact him and pursue that.
But he did have insurance?
Yep, I did file an insurance, I talked to Mary about filing an insurance claim through SURSA, but we don't wanna pay our deductible, so we wanna pursue it that way. So, I hope we can get something out of it.
If we don't have results in a timely fashion from the insurance company, would it be prudent for us to hire a public adjuster?
I would have to look at your source of policy, I'm not sure what they would.
So that we can get,
I would say, did you talk to them about the restitution?
The suggestion was to go after insurance first.
Okay. If insurance doesn't work, we may be able to use the municipal court to get some restitution out of it. I'm not sure public adjusters, I think the problem is I think we should go after the restitution as a second option, and then after that, we'll figure out what we need to do.
The range of estimates is between $1,000 for basically resetting the pole, with a flow fill, or up to $7,000 if it's electrical. So we have to basically remove it, kind of relocate it, because that's also sandy, and then redo the wiring and the conduit.
the pole wasn't damaged significantly?
No, because luckily it was a car, not a truck. And it basically, if I can describe it, Carl, the right way, it basically T-boned the pole and the rocks around it, and it kind of hit the rocks. So those boulders are great. Because if it wasn't for that, it would have hit the shelter.
So the light above that's broken just got snapped back into place?
I don't think the light's broken.
I have pictures of it.
Yeah.
Is the light broken?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's like snapped or if it just needs to be reset. It looked minor, but,
Okay.
yeah, it didn't look.
Because when Mike looked at it, he said the main concerns underneath, he didn't mention the light poles at all. So, okay.
Light pole. Was it moving at a high rate of speed or something when he hit that car?
It's kinda hard to tell. He was showing off, and just made a left way too fast, and if I had to guess, probably 25 to 30 miles an hour. All the airbags went off, so it was fast enough to set off airbags, yeah.
Well, I hope it doesn't cost as much, and I hope it's not as much. I hope the insurance company steps up to the plate, because restitution is a slippery slope, because I wonder how often do you really get restitution? Or how many times, or how often is it just blown off because they claim property?
That's why I'm going with trying to get an insurance claim first. The court always gets restitution, but it's usually small amounts, not thousands of dollars.
And sometimes it's with the payment plan.
And normally, unless it's a very small amount, like $50 or $100, it's a payment plan, so it would take years in this matter to get it back. That's why I want to go after insurance first. So,
I appreciate that, thank you.
The ditch in Journey was supposed to, well, actually, the Journey Homes, Crow Creek, basically part of Journey Homes supposed to start on the ditch fence, and they have not yet. They're still waiting, I think, 1 or 2 residents to sign their waiver of release, is what I call it. But I think they anticipate tomorrow starting on doing that new fence and that. I call it case on it, or footers, not as a retaining wall, but it acts like a footer. It's supposed to be 8 inches wide, and I think 30 or, can't remember exactly, but over, right around 3 foot deep along that bank. There's concerns, I've talked to a lot of people, but at the end I had to refer them to the attorney for the ditch company.
3 foot's a lot. I mean, if the ditch erodes down 3 foot, they're gonna have to backfill it, or it's gonna wash, and
Well, it's gonna be
defeats their
interesting.
purposes, so I would think 3 foot would be enough. It seems logical, doesn't it?
It's gonna be interesting because I read the contract between Journey and Fitco, and Journey and Crow Creek's not supposed to put an item in the bottom of that ditch other than foot traffic. No heavy equipment, no tires, no nothing.
Just have your equipment in it all day today. I mean, I don't know if it was.
I'm gonna stay out of that portion.
Yeah.
But as long as it gets done right. There's been some back and forth about the warranty. Right now, there's a 1-year warranty. I've asked for a 2-year warranty. It's not finalized yet.
Do we have any standing in that?
We're just a third-party monitor at this
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Legally, I don't know how we can enforce the issue. We can't.
I think that's the out of it at this point.
That's right.
So next time, actually some good news. Terry Weedman left me a message on Friday, said the family on this water purchase for the 4 shares we talked about last time, when discussed over the weekend. We spoke yesterday, and then end of work yesterday, he called me back and said that they agreed to the 4 shares, so he's writing a contract with the town to buy those 4 shares of CBT at $120,000 out of the water fund.
5,000 cheaper than wasn't it 5,000 cheaper than we said?
You said
We
30,000.
weren't there,
No, there's,
30,000 a share,
oh,
and then,
Nice to finally get some.
upon contract, it'll go under, to northern transfer, northern temporary use permit, typically 9 to 12 months, then becomes a permanent share. But we could use them as soon as they can become a temporary use.
And that money's coming out of, it's water fund, what?
Call a trust is reserve account.
Okay, because we used to have a water fund, but it was 100,000, and I didn't
Yeah,
know.
and that line item hasn't been in there for 3 years now.
Okay, so we took that out somewhere, so what line item, where are we?
There's no line item, we're taking it not out of the budgeted fund for the water fund, we're taking it out of reserve funds and call it trust.
Unrestricted fund balance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, basically, as long as I know where it's coming.
David, do you know what the snowpack is currently?
Haven't checked,
Okay.
so I'm not sure.
I didn't know.
The North Platte was, I think, 91% today, and the South Platte was about 82 when I watched it this morning.
Oh, okay. I was curious.
And that's the best in the state, probably the South Shore, worst it is.
Yeah.
I had the weather on all day, Kim, I drove up.
We need that.
You really gotta get a life, you know?
Marty Keneally over here.
That's right.
Speaking of 66, Dave and I were notified by Larry Haas at CDOT that they're gonna start pursuing the pedestrian crosswalk improvements at 66 and Main Street. They're finalizing design, I believe April, they'll put it out in May, and then they'll do the work pretty much in June, maybe a little bit in July, but they'll get done before the school starts again next year, or this next school year after the summer.
How far are they setting those sidewalks back? Because those trucks just, they almost take out that head gate.
On the southwest corner?
That's the only corner not getting any improvements for obvious reasons.
Yeah, but they knock over signs and they,
Okay,
Can't
so
seem to
they're
make
not,
turns.
so they've observed that problem too then.
And this, and I'll quote it, is basically a temporary throwaway project for $162,000 and change, because we're trying to pursue, and I'll put this in my report in the tops, that's going on the utility building. I basically went from a 1-page to a 2-page, so I want to provide some more information, but just as a recap for everybody, a few years ago, we met with CDOT in this room, and Johnny Olson and his representatives, and FHU, which is the planning or design company that they contract with all the time, to look at improvements, long-term improvements. They did a conceptual plan. I have a map in my office. It's quite large, and it talks about details. It has turning lanes, permanent light, it has raised median, sidewalk from Division all the way to the Everyday Store. No sidewalk on the other side because there's enough pavement for pedestrian access between the banks over there. But it was a nice concept plan. FHE was going to put it toward design, and it was stopped because the cost came out to about $200,000 to complete the engineering and design. And that money wasn't there, or allocated, I should say. So what we got is at least a partial improvement for the pedestrian side of things, but as far as traffic movement, you know, light turns green, there's no arrows. I mean, I know how it is in the morning, I've watched it too many times. But before the light, it was a death trap going north and south.
It is so much better than it was.
It's better than it was, it's not ideal. But I still get calls that it took me 4 light cycles to get through. You know, fortunately.
But, you know, it's still better, like I said, it's still better than it was. And
it is.
you know, nothing's ever gonna be perfect because we don't have enough land right there. That's the problem, we don't have enough land.
So I am still pushing that, I'm still pursuing that. I did make a formal request for the upper front range. I think it was at the December meeting, Steve, that we went to. Actually, it was last September.
We didn't go to that.
I went.
You went to that.
You
I don't know.
You attended a few, I can't remember if you attended that one or not.
Yeah, I can't remember even where it was.
But the upper front range, they have basically transportation plan of projects, and that's not the term, that's what I call it, and it's prioritized. The biggest argument last year is that the highest priority projects never get funded because there's not enough money to fund them. So let's revisit the prioritization of these projects and get some of these $500,000, $250,000 projects funded. So they asked for new proposals, so I submitted this one. One proposal for the design and construction, and the second one is for the construction. So sort of the design engineering, number one, for $200,000. Then I threw in a cost of about $5 million for the construction.
So it's not land, it's funds?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And we're waiting to see how all that works out.
Awesome.
The people who were, and I remember when I went, the only problem was the people with the big projects who were ahead were very disenchanted with the thought of giving us lowly people with small amounts any credibility. So there was that issue.
Well, any given year, the average that we get, because the feds give the state of Colorado a pool of money, then each transportation region divvies up equally. And when you get 2.1, 2.5 million for your whole region, you can't get anything done. So part of the thought process until the transportation bill gets revisited, use the money and get some of these smaller projects off the shelf and get them done. And we fit that kind of category, at least on the design and engineering.
As a side note, what surprised me is these areas that get a pretty good funding for a big project, some of them never finish the project. There's like $100,000 sitting in the kitty, and they just kind of, you know, did everything, the interest peters out, and they never finish it off, and they were gonna take that money. It amazes me that things like that occur in government. It just, I'm appalled and astounded.
You're surprised the government is inefficient at times?
Yes, it's just.
Who knew?
Yeah.
The last project update I wanted to mention, because I had a call yesterday from Mr. Al Ermer from Excel, is it was a year ago next month I submitted a request to do the undergrounding on Main Street, phase 1 of our streetscape plan. He said he should have it done to me in the next 2 weeks unless the crisis comes up. So the biggest delay, besides these big paying projects that they've had been pulled off to design electrical for the subdivision developments. I didn't realize this piece. Many of those poles that we want to get rid of have transformers on them. So he wants to meet with me the end of next week on site and probably with Dave as well, to talk about where we're gonna put these transformers. Because they're in the alleys. They're on the poles now, but they ain't crossing the line. But basically the alleys from out here at Grand Avenue down to Cherry, just past the Cracked Egg, that's the focus for phase 1. But part of that undergrounding is not just to get rid of the overhead lines and get rid of the poles, but work with Excel to put the conduit in for our future streetscape lights and everything, so on and so forth.
What have other towns done for the transformers? Do you know?
I haven't asked, I just found out yesterday.
No, there's a pole, you're gonna have a pole where they have to run the lines down to run through the conduit. Can't they just move the transformer to that pole? And then you're gonna run the line down, just like at the community center. Run the line down and then run it into the conduit.
That I can't answer, I don't know enough about Excel.
I can't believe they finally called you. That is amazing.
I was calling him about, once a week initially, and then I backed off to about twice a month.
Him and I talked about going down there, sitting in the guy's office and saying, we got nowhere to go until you talk to us.
Well, what I found out is, Excel had changed their permitting process, their software, basically their permitting system a while back, which delayed our transformer at the senior center. That was delayed a month because it was a changeover. And then I found out from some Excel people that they're bombarded with development, they're just short staffed. So I just had to grow some patience on this one, but it finally came through.
Will it take a long time between when they finally get that design? They don't have to put it up for RFPs, do they? They have contractors?
Well, once we get the design and the cost estimates, but the next step is we have a 1% undergrounding fund franchise agreement with Excel. We've had for years. To my knowledge, we've never used it. There's over 300, almost 400,000 in that fund that's available. The undergrounding is $300 to $500 a foot. So that money goes away real fast. And that's only for the main line. Any service connection to every property, that's our dime. We pay for that. We can't use underground fund for that, the franchise agreement. So I have a lot of questions. I don't have the answers yet as far as funding is concerned. But it can be done, of course it will. We just have to keep working on it and improve our downtown.
You bet.
And that's just one aspect. Don't get me wrong, that's just one aspect.
Under improving the downtown, trying to revitalize it, is a lot more complicated than most people realize. There's just so much more before we even see anything changing on the outside.
Well, getting all the way to 66, you're looking at improving Marion, up to the Doubletree. I've had conversations with people who want to put some decorative lighting down Grand Avenue all the way around Sturkle. Those are our main corridors. I don't oppose any of that. It's actually good ideas, but I think the downtown needs to be the first priority. We talked about that during the streetscape plan
For many years now.
That's all I have. If any questions, I am taking some personal time off from my family through next week. But you can call me by phone if I don't answer. Call Dave's phone.
If you answer,
Todd will be around.
If you answer the phone, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
But,
Did you finish your grant training?
yeah, it's all done. Last fall was grant management, now it's grant writing, so when I get back from leave, I'm gonna start doing some research and look for some funding opportunities.
You're leaving when?
Thursday.
So, board,
Everybody call.
we got call the town manager du jour in waves. Keep the.
I'm gonna delete your number.
I have figured out what the off button is on my phone.
Oh, you know where that's at, huh?
You are more capable hands with David, Carl, and Mary, and staff. Foresee me
I don't know, I bet Mary, she hunts you down when she needs something done.
Do you have any questions for me?
Everybody good?
Good.
Thank you very much. We stand adjourned.